New evidence regarding Pooh's murders was just made public by the federal government. Not like Gucci Mane. Real ones, not the kidnapping killings in Dallas. The type without a statute of limitations. Memphis homicide detectives have been listening to this type of music for years, waiting for the ideal opportunity to link it to a federal case. And that time is now. Pushy claimed that Boozy Badazz might be the only rapper alive with more bodies than him in a public, unfiltered post on Second's Instagram. Not Savage, not NBA Youngboy, and not Lil Durk. Boozy. Second, the individual who ordered killings was physically put on death row by the state of Louisiana. When it came to confirmed murders, Pooh Shiesty's only second competitor was that name. And he stated it as if it were a credential, a flex, or something he was proud of. It was heard by the feds. It was heard by the investigators. Seconds, and they are currently actively pursuing each unresolved shooting. Each and every open murder. Every cold case in Memphis has Pooh Shiesty's name hanging about in the streets. Because when you willingly disclose to the public that your body count is comparable to A, you just gave federal prosecutors a road plan and challenged them to follow it. A second man who won a murder case with the death penalty. Then, weeks later, this individual was purportedly on home confinement in a Dallas recording studio with an AK-style gun aimed at Gucci Mane's face on a minute-second federal ankle monitor. The government's tracking device, which was strapped to his ankle and provided GPS coordinates of every move he made, is said to have been used by the same man who spent his entire career catching minute-second bodies, sliding on operations, popping out on everyone, and writing in real time. Seconds need to hear this, y'all. Everything. Because it's not only an abduction case that the federal government is currently constructing in that Dallas courthouse. They are building the whole image of Lantrell Williams Jr.'s true identity minute by minute. And they're doing it with his own music from his ankle monitor, his own Instagram, and his own music. This is the tale of a minute-seconds man who has always told the truth and is now witnessing that truth turn into the proof that will bury him. We need minutes and seconds to go all the way back, not to Florida or the Gucci scenario, in order to comprehend how we got here, family. We must return to Memphis, Tennessee, minutes and seconds in particular, the aspect of Memphis that is not depicted in travel guides. Lantrell Donnell Williams Jr., minutes and seconds, was born on November 3rd. He grew up in a city where violence is part of the surroundings rather than background noise. Memphis routinely appears on lists of America's most violent cities per capita. Minutes, seconds, South Memphis, Binghamton, and Orange Mound. These aren't merely residential areas. The laws of survival in these ecosystems are quite different from what the general public is aware of. Furthermore, Pooh Shiesty didn't simply grow up next to that world. He was raised in it. A marketing team did not create his stage minutes, seconds name. He received it from his late brother. He added shyness to Lantrell's boyhood moniker, Mr. Pooh. Minutes, seconds, shyness, as in being deceitful and unreliable to your adversaries. Someone who moves in the shadows and strikes without warning. His own brother named him after observing the child's development over the course of a few minutes. That gives you a complete picture of the surroundings that shaped this individual. By the time Pooh he had begun to use that setting as inspiration for his songs. Minutes, seconds. His first single, Hell Night with Big, which was released in March, didn't sound like a young person attempting to succeed in rap. It sounded like a field recording of minutes and seconds during a conflict. Next was Choa Talk. Summer is Shy. Record after record that provided precise, in-depth depictions of what life was like in the Memphis trenches. Not overdone or glamorized for the purpose of entertainment, as reported by journalists using beat minutes or seconds in advance. Minutes heard something in Pooh Shiesty and signed him to records, according to Gucci Mane, a man who established his reputation by signing musicians that were unquestionably true to the street experience. No cap. Minutes. And since Gucci Mane doesn't sign rappers, the co-sign was crucial. People that remind him of himself in music are signed by Gucci Mane. They are raw, dangerous, minute, second, and totally unfiltered. Pooh Shiesty's Gucci stamp served as the culture's official confirmation that this wasn't a performance. This was actual. The song, Minutes, Seconds Back in Blood with Lil Durk, was released in November and peaked at #1 on the Billboard Hot list. The music video honored King Von, who had been killed in Atlanta only a few weeks prior. one of his generation's most lyrically focused minutes, seconds, and street reporters. Pooh Shiesty's performance as an homage to King Von was more than simply sadness. Alignment was the cause. Minutes, seconds, it was two schools of thought, Chicago and Memphis, connecting over a shared understanding of what real street violence actually looks like. And when his first mixtape, Shy Season, came out ahead of schedule and hit number 3 on the Billboard charts, everyone understood in minutes, seconds. It was not appropriate to play with this child. Here's what the industry celebration overlooked, though. The same level of information about violence that made his bars seem like they were written in blood, and the same level of specificity that made his music minutes and seconds amazing were also a federal liability that accumulated minutes and seconds with each verse. Gang, this is when the real tea begins. And since people have been glossing over it for minutes and seconds as if it weren't the most careless thing a rapper has said in public in years, I need you all to take a moment to think this through. A few weeks prior to the FBI breaking into his home in February, Pooh Shiesty made an allegation on Instagram Live. Boozy Badass may be the only rapper alive with more bodies than him, he claimed. To ensure that it lands correctly, let me repeat the minutes. He made no mention of Bowie possibly catching more bags. He didn't mention further awards, hits, minutes, seconds, shows, or bodies. He made a body count public, with only one potential exception throughout the entire rap game. He turned it into a competition and put himself at the top of it in minutes and seconds. For those who are unaware of the reference, Boozy Badass, a resident of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was charged with first-degree murder in minutes and seconds. The state of Louisiana pursued the death sentence in addition to the charges. They claimed that Bowie had given the order to hit Terry Boyd. Witnesses were called to testify. They constructed a case intended to put Torrance Hatch to death. Boozy ultimately overcame such accusations in minutes and seconds. However, the verdict is not the point. When Pooh Shiesty explicitly named Bowie, he was making a point. Minutes and seconds weren't choosing a name at random. He chose the one rapper in the culture whose murder accusations were the most well-publicized, documented, and most severe in hip-hop history. After saying, "I might have him beat," Boozy returned and attempted to clean up after a few minutes. Said Pooh was discussing ladies rather than physical bodies. In that context, second bodies referred to women he had dated rather than individuals he had supposedly buried. And so, I can see what Boozy was attempting to accomplish. He's been around long enough to know that social media is screened by the federal government. He has experienced the system. He was attempting to cover a fire with a tarp before it burned everything down in a matter of minutes. The issue was that the video was already widely available. It was already with the investigators. Boozy's interpretation of Pooh's meaning is also unnecessary for federal prosecutors. Minutes, seconds. They have their own detectives, analyzers, and files on unsolved homicides in Memphis. However, this is what no one is discussing. The Instagram post, minutes, seconds, wasn't unique. It wasn't a heated moment. It was in line with everything Pooh Shiesty had been saying for minutes, seconds, and even years. This isn't an instance of a rapper saying something foolish. His whole catalog exhibits this tendency. The picture that appears is unsettling to the body when you examine the lyrics in the same way that a federal prosecutor examines minutes. That is, not as art or expression, but as proof of mental state and recorded behavior. His partnership with Duty Low in Chicago. Minutes, seconds. The chorus specifically discusses sliding on blocks and catching bodies. His verse on the song alludes to the round coming out and hitting everyone in a matter of minutes and seconds. However, hidden in that same chorus is the line that ought to make every defense lawyer in America shudder. Minutes, seconds. Your Honor, I am innocent. Repeat that to yourself. I am innocent, Your Honor, the man wrote in minutes, secondarily, self-defense. As though he already knew he would have to practice his denial in front of a judge at some point. It's not a minute-by-minute coincidence. Subconscious documentation is what that is. He was portrayed in Back in Blood as someone who reacts to murder within minutes. The operational details of street violence in Memphis were recounted in his early works, such as Hell Night and Shiesty Summer, with the same level of detail that investigators employ to create timelines. Minutes, seconds, and in every verse, minute, second, hook, and ad-lib, the topic wasn't success or money. Violence was the topic that kept coming up. First minutes, second person, personal. This violence was done by me. My operations are not being shot. I Pooh Shiesty. Rap lyrics have been used as evidence by federal prosecutors since at least the early 1900s. Courts have often decided that lyrics can show intent, minutes, second motive, and behavioral style. Additionally, Pooh Shiesty's catalog is clear. A reasonable person could not argue that it is metaphorical in any sense in court. Minutes, seconds. It is precise, thorough, and in line with the behavioral profile that the government is currently constructing for him. However, there is just one lane in the lyrics. Minutes, seconds. What follows is the actual evidence, the kind that prevails in federal cases. Family, let me set the stage. It's January 1st, a Friday evening in Dallas, Texas. Three individuals with ties to the music business are on their way to a city recording studio. They think they are entering an official business meeting. According to their understanding, the goal of the minutes and seconds is to talk about the conditions of Pooh Shiesty's recording deal with Gucci Mane's records. Around that agreement, there had been constant anxiety for minutes on end. The majority of his artists were apparently dropped from the label by Gucci, while Pooh Shiesty and Fujiano's minutes and seconds were still signed. Someone had arranged a meeting to address the relationship, which had supposedly gotten so bad that Pooh wanted to end it. It wasn't a meeting, according to the minutes that the three individuals entered. According to federal prosecutors, Lantrell Minutes Seconds Williams Jr. arranged a planned armed takeover, a trap, and a setup. Himself. The play-by-play is shown here. The government's version of events claims that Pooh Shiesty, who had been released from federal prison in October following a 3-year sentence for a previous firearms conviction in Florida, set up this meeting in the Dallas studio. At this point, Pooh Shiesty had been out of federal prison for precisely months, minutes, and seconds. However, minutes, seconds, music, and 8 other conspirators allegedly started scheming weeks prior to that meeting. Lantrell Williams, Sr., his father, is said to have rented a car. Minutes, seconds. That car transported crew members from Memphis, Tennessee, to Dallas, a journey that was traced over hundreds of minutes and miles of highway by cell phone records and license plate readers. A number of defendants allegedly went to a Staples store close to the studio a few days before the meeting. Minutes, seconds. According to the prosecution, they were printing documents pertaining to the contract fraud, including contract termination paperwork that Gucci Mane would allegedly be forced to sign at gunpoint. They were printing song lyrics, according to the defense. The authorities claimed to be producing an armed robberies blueprint. You determine which story makes more sense in a matter of minutes and seconds. The 9 defendants reportedly carried out their plan on January 3rd after the 3 victims showed up at the studio for what they thought was a brief but legitimate business conversation. According to reports, Pooh Shiesty pulled out an AK minutes and seconds style pistol, the same kind of weapon he frequently raps about, the same blaze he mentions in his Minutes, a second of music, and aimed it straight at one of the victims. He allegedly produced the contract termination documents and insisted that Gucci may sign them under the gun's second barrel. The remainder of the crew went to work while that was going on. One victim was nearly unconscious after being choked. Pooh's longtime partner, Big Rodney Minutes Seconds Wright Jr., is said to have physically blocked the studio entrance with his body to prevent anyone from leaving. Minutes, seconds. The victims were robbed one by one. High-end jewelry, cash, diamond chains, and Rolex watches. When it was finished, minutes and seconds, Gucci Mane alone is said to have lost a watch and diamond earrings. The entire worth of what was allegedly taken came to about $minutes. Minutes, seconds. After that, some of the defendants allegedly returned to their hotel and shared the stolen jewels on Minutes, Seconds social media because the case could not have gotten any more bizarre. Additionally, as further detailed in the complaint, the defendants were on social media a few minutes after leaving the Dallas studio, showcasing what appeared to be some of the jewelry that had been stolen from the victims. This is the part of the story that should completely blow you away, though. The minutes, seconds, planning, the travel from Memphis to Dallas, the alleged heist, and the return trip all took place within this entire period. A federal ankle monitor was fastened to Pooh Shiesty's Minutes, seconds leg, a government-installed gadget intended to monitor his precise position in real time and make sure he complies with his house minutes, seconds confinement requirements. He was in the studio thanks to the ankle monitor. It took him away from his legally mandated location. It gave a minute-by-minute, second timestamp GPS record of all the infractions he had made that evening. In the hands of federal prosecutors, the document that the federal court system sent him as a requirement of his supervised minutes, seconds release, turned into the most incriminating piece of evidence in the entire case against him. His own minute-second leash caught him. On April 2nd, U.S. Attorney Ryan Raybould stated it clearly while standing at a podium in Dallas. "I'm here to assure anyone who is thinking about employing violence and intimidation as a business strategy that it will be thoroughly looked into and prosecuted." Minutes, seconds. The general public was not the target audience for that message. That statement was a message to all American rappers who believe that the feds won't find out since the streets don't monitor or second talk. Every time, the feds find out. Additionally, they discover that you are carrying their tracking device when you supposedly commit the crime before you return to Memphis. Minutes, seconds at this point, people began making connections that the majority of the public has yet to completely comprehend. Minutes, seconds because the DOJ's case on April 2nd was not based on the evidence of a single witness. It wasn't a he said, she said scenario. There were 7 independent, minutes, and second types of evidence all point to the same group of individuals, and each and every one of them has a connection to Pooh Shiesty. Bradford minutes, seconds. Cohen, the defense lawyer, made it a point to stress that the FBI waited months to make arrests, which he presented as evidence of the case's weakness. If the FBI believes all that was reported the night it happened, they don't need minutes, seconds, or even months to make an arrest. I believe the FBI was greatly alarmed by the way the statements were made, what was said in minutes and seconds, what was purportedly witnessed, and what wasn't. If the FBI believes all that was said on the night of the incident, they don't need minutes, seconds, or even months to make an arrest. That's a smart legal argument. But here's the counter-argument nobody's making. Cohen, music, minutes stated in public. When they want to bury someone, the FBI takes months. They pull every thread, cross-reference every database, and build a case that, by the time it goes to trial, has no holes in it. Let me break down what they built. First, the ankle monitor data. Minutes, seconds timestamp GPS records showing Pooh Shiesty's real-time location on the night of January 13th. The device placed him at the studio. The minutes-seconds device showed him leaving the perimeter of his authorized residence. Every second of that night is recorded with government-level accuracy. 2 minutes, seconds. Cell phone records showed that all 9 defendants were in the same places at the same times. Memphis departure, highway transit, minutes, seconds, Dallas arrival, the studio location, and the hotel where several defendants stayed afterward. 3 license plate minutes, seconds readers, automated license plate readers on the route from Memphis to minutes, seconds Dallas, and in the areas immediately surrounding the studio. Minutes, seconds. Texas has a vast network of these readers on its highways and in its cities. The prosecution has a visual record of the crew's movements in Dallas from the time they arrived to the time they left. 5 latent fingerprints. 2 defendants' fingerprints were recovered from minutes, seconds of surveillance footage. Cameras at the studio complex, cameras at the nearby hotel, and cameras at the Staples store where minutes, seconds defendants allegedly went to print the contract termination paperwork, also captured the group. 6 social media posts. Following the alleged robbery, several members of the group allegedly posted on their social media accounts flashing what appeared to be the stolen jewelry. You rob a man at gunpoint, take his watch, and then post it on Instagram. This is not a joke. Federal investigators documented every post and preserved every screenshot, minute, and second and matched what was being shown off to the descriptions provided by the victims. 7. Greyhound bus records. Minutes, seconds. Several co-defendants reportedly took a Greyhound bus from Dallas back to Memphis the morning after the alleged robbery. Public transportation with ticketed records attached to real names. Minutes, seconds. The government can trace exactly who got on that bus and when. Now, minutes, seconds, and the murder angle fully enter this. The FBI admitted during the detention hearing that they had not yet conducted formal interviews with Gucci Mane or the other victims. At that point, they were depending on statements made to Dallas police the night of the incident. Cohen attempted to use that as The federal probe into Pooh Shiesty's activities did not begin and end with the January incident, according to sources with knowledge of the investigation. Federal minutes and seconds investigations, once opened, cast a wide net. When the DOJ and FBI open a file on someone, they look at the full picture. That means Memphis. That means cold cases. That means unsolved homicides that have never resulted in charges, but that have Pooh Shiest's name circulating in investigative reports going back years. However, Cohen did not publicly address what investigators are doing in parallel to the kidnapping case. Minutes, seconds, and here's the real tea. When Pooh went on Instagram and claimed he might have more bodies than Boosie, that statement is in federal files right now. Minutes, seconds. Investigators use public statements to establish behavioral patterns, state of mind, and consciousness of guilt. A man who publicly claims to be one of the most prolific killers in the rap game, minutes, seconds, even if he's not charged with a specific murder today, has just told investigators exactly where to look. Memphis homicide files, unsolved shootings, cases that minutes, seconds went cold because nobody talked. The feds are pulling every one of those files right now and running Pooh Shiesty's name through every one of them. Minutes, seconds, that's what the new evidence is. It isn't just the ankle monitor data and the fingerprints from the Dallas studio. Minutes, seconds. The new evidence is the totality of a life that Pooh Shiesty documented himself in his music, on his social media, and in his public statements. Minutes, seconds, and that federal investigators are now methodically cross-referencing every piece of law enforcement data they have access to. April 2nd, FBI Memphis executes search and arrest warrants at a residence connected to Pooh Shiesty's family. Minutes, seconds. More breaking news. Your news leader is following. We're learning more about an FBI search party at a home associated with Memphis rapper Pooh Shiesty. Now, take a look. This was the scene outside a court of a home owned by Lantrell D. Williams, also known as Pooh Shiesty, or his father, Lantrell Williams Jr., is taken into custody. On April 4th, Pooh Shiesty appeared before U.S. Magistrate Judge Renee Harris Toiver in Dallas. The same day, raids took place in several cities, including Memphis, Nashville, Dallas, and finally Atlanta when the final defendant, minutes and seconds before Terrence Rogers, was apprehended by the FBI. A total of 9 arrests are made. All 9 defendants are accused of kidnapping and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. If found guilty, the maximum sentence is life in federal prison. The judge looked at him and said, "I find that the weight of the evidence against you is strong," citing his criminal history, the fact that he had violated his home confinement order, and the lengthy sentence he would face if found guilty. The court's decision was clear, and no release conditions were offered because the court found that there were none and that this man had not already violated. On April 4th, Shiesty was transferred to Kaufman County Detention Center, 50 miles southeast of Dallas, where he is being held through the U.S. Marshals Service. His father was initially released on house arrest in Memphis, then transferred to Texas and put back in custody. All 9 defendants are currently in federal custody awaiting trial. The government proved both standards, and the judge ruled accordingly. The internet went crazy when Gucci Mane released a diss song titled Crash Dummy and Fam, in which he openly mocked Pooh Shiesty. He rapped that after all of the alleged events, the guns, the robbery, and the kidnapping, Pooh was still officially signed to records. Tell the truth. Minutes, seconds, you went out like a real crash dummy. Minutes, seconds, Gucci rapped. He brought up family. He made it cinematic. The culture's response was divided, but Boosie Badass was the loudest and most significant voice for minutes, seconds, and understanding the street politics of this situation. Boosie was disgusted, not at Pooh, but at Gucci because, in street culture, what Gucci allegedly did, making a police report, cooperating with the government's case, and then minutes, seconds later, making a diss track about the situation, is the trifecta of violations. Bowie went on stream and said, "This music is crazy. The street code says you handle your minutes and seconds business. You don't run to law enforcement. You don't then make a song about it. Whether you agree with that code or not, that is the code." And Gucci, minutes, seconds, Mane, who built his entire brand on being the personification of that code, allegedly violated every part of it. That's why Boosie, who literally respects Gucci Mane as an OG, couldn't keep quiet about it. But here's what Boozy and everyone else defending Pooh's minutes and seconds Sun's code grounds are ignoring. Pooh Shiesty faces life in federal prison. Minutes, seconds the rap code, the street code, the culture's judgment on Gucci's behavior. Minutes, seconds, none of that matters at all when you're sitting in a Kaufman County detention center awaiting a federal trial. Principles don't override the GPS data from an ankle monitor. And Pooh Shiesty, the man who rapped "I am innocent, Your Honor," appeared before a real judge and entered a not guilty plea to all charges. His lawyer, Kent Schaefer, confirmed the arraignment. There is a lesson in pushed minutes and seconds that goes beyond one rapper's legal issues. Lantrell Williams Jr. was years old when this federal case came down on him. He had a top Billboard hit, a debut mixtape that, in minutes and seconds, entered at number 3 on the Billboard and 1 million YouTube views on FDO. The defense will fight this on the basis of the evidence, the 3-month timeline gap, and the credibility of the government's witnesses. His comeback single was released just a few weeks after he was released from prison in October, demonstrating that even after years of incarceration, his audience had not moved on. He had everything he needed in minutes, seconds, to build a legitimate career in rap, a real second act, a story of redemption that people genuinely wanted to root for. 6 months after his release, he allegedly entered a Dallas recording studio with an AK-style pistol. This is not a story about the music industry failing Pooh Shiesty. It's not a story about systemic injustice, a setup, or poor timing. His first federal case, the Florida case, was based in part on his own Instagram posts. Minutes, seconds. Investigators identified the car he was driving from a post he made showcasing the McLaren by matching the serial number on a dollar bill he posted on social media to a bill recovered at the scene of an alleged robbery. He provided them with the evidence, which he paid for with 3 years of his life. He minutes, seconds got out. He dropped music. The street rejoiced. Minutes, seconds then, with an ankle monitor on his leg, he allegedly returned to the same pattern. Bigger stakes, minutes, seconds, more defendants, a federal kidnapping charge instead of a robbery and firearms charge, and the same self-documentation minutes, seconds instinct that burned him lit the match again. The Instagram Live claims more bodies than Boozy, the social media post of stolen jewelry, the minutes, seconds public record of a man who has never been able to stop himself from revealing his identity. Here's the real tea on what the feds are building. This is not just about January 1st. Federal investigations have a way of growing. When the DOJ opens a minutes-seconds phase and begins gathering information on a person's criminal history, they don't stop at the most recent incident. They go back, way back. They are currently in Memphis. They are talking to people. Minutes, seconds. They are reviewing case files on unsolved homicides and looking for the bodies he claimed on Instagram, whether that statement was literal or metaphorical. The kidnapping case in Dallas is not the worst thing that could happen to Pooh Shiesty. If the murder allegations are true, there are minutes, seconds, and unsolved homicides in Memphis that are connected to him. The second worst thing that could happen is that the federal investigation keeps growing and the next set of charges doesn't say kidnapping. It says murder. No minutes, seconds cap. The federal conviction rate sits above 80%. The DOJ doesn't file cases they don't think they can win. They are not gambling with this indictment. Minutes, seconds, and when a federal judge declares, the weight of the evidence against you is strong, while staring a 70-year-old man in the eye. Pooh Shiesty is currently in Kaufman County Detention Minutes, Second Center, which is located outside of Dallas. No trial date has been set, no bond. His father is in custody, Big is in custody, and 7 other co-defendants are in custody. The judge who denied bond has seen the file and is aware of its contents. The case is still in its early stages, so the government is still building, investigating, and pulling threads on everything this man has ever been associated with. The culture loves to debate who is real and who is performing, and that debate always goes in Pooh Shiesty's favor. No one in hip-hop seriously questions whether his street credentials are authentic. The streets accepted him from day one. However, authenticity has a price that the celebration never includes in the invoice. The same lived reality that makes the music resonate is the same truth that federal prosecutors compile into discovery packets and present to juries. Minutes, the second stated, "On record, Your Honor, I am innocent." He now stands in front of a real federal judge and says those exact words, but this time there's no beat, minutes, or seconds behind it. No duty low in the chorus, just Lantrell Williams Jr., a federal indictment, and the mountain of evidence the government spent 3 months, minutes, and seconds assembling before they ever put handcuffs on him. He has been talking about catching bodies for years, claiming more bodies on Instagram than Boozy. Minutes, seconds, and now the federal government has unveiled further evidence that affirms, "We heard you. We have faith in you, and you will have to prove that in court." The question isn't whether minutes, seconds, Pooh Shiesty is real. Rather, it's whether real can outperform what the federal government just presented. Based on what we currently know, including the ankle monitor, the fingerprints, the cell records, the cameras, the social media posts, and the murder allegations lurking in the background of this entire minutes, seconds case, the answer isn't looking good for Lantrell Williams Jr.